All right, well, welcome, good evening. Welcome to the East Cooper Democrats Candidate Forum for Mount Pleasant Mayor. Joining us this evening are our candidates, Will Haynie and Kathy Landing, and we may see Brandon Armstrong as well. So we want to thank you guys for joining us and giving us some of your time this evening. We really appreciate it. My name is Kelly Gorby, and joining me from our leadership team is Lee Rowland, who's going to help with questions, and Donna Brown Newton, who's going to help keep our time this evening. So, and we have Ryan Wright, who is our technical assistance. So our format for this evening, we will have a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, followed by a series of questions that were submitted by you, our members. So thank you. We will then have 2 minutes for the closing statement for each candidate. So we'll go in alphabetical order, rotating the candidate that starts first, so everyone gets a chance to start first. So for our opening statements, it will be Will Haynie and then Kathy Landing. And then if Brandon joins us, she would always be before Will and after Kathy. So Donna is going to keep the time for the 2-minute mark. At 30 seconds, she has a sign that she'll put up so you kind of know to get finished up. And then at the 2 minutes, she's got a timer on her phone and she's just going to let that go. So we do ask everybody respect the time. So that all being said, let's get started with our opening statements. Will Haynie, you have 2 minutes, and then Kathy, you as well. Will, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the East Cooper Democrats for hosting us tonight. And Kelly and Ryan and Donna and Lee, thank you so much. I look forward to an informative and very positive evening tonight. Suzette, my wife Suzette Haynie, and I thank you, the voters of Mount Pleasant, for giving us the last 4 years to be your mayor and first lady. Many of you probably know her from her nearly a decade of teaching at Jenny Moore right there in the Hamlin community, and she's been a lifelong dedicated public school educator. And we're asking you for 4 more years to be your mayor and first lady. When I was elected in 2017, I had the support of the former chairman of the Charleston Democrat Party and the former chairman of the Charleston Republican Party. Everyone knows this is nonpartisan, and I love it. I love it that way. I have no interest in running for partisan office, and I plan to keep it that way. And I think it's important that we have a mayor that works with both sides of the aisle, with both parties. It is truly a nonpartisan office. My focus has been on what's good for our town, and that's the theme for my campaign. Of course, it's the quality of life. Of course, that is reining in development, which we have done. We'll talk about that more later, but I promised to do that when I started. I promised to protect our environment and keep our shrimping fleet going and keep our seafood supply clean and available, and we have done that as well. We're fixing our transportation, not only our roads, but through public transit. And I've involved myself in the opioid crisis through our community, our children, and I have helped with COVID by organizing Operation COVID Christmas, bringing together nonprofits, retirement communities, the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce to honor our healthcare workers. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to sharing with you tonight why I think I deserve another term as your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Landing, you have the floor.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to the East Cooper Democratic Party for this opportunity. Thanks, Kelly and Lee and Ryan and Donna. It is so great to be able to share ideas tonight and let you know more about who we are. You may know us a little bit through things you've heard, but hopefully tonight we will really have an opportunity to go a lot deeper dive. My background is that I came to the Low Country in 1984 with my husband, Joe, who was an officer in the Navy. We met at Duke University, and we were here, like a lot of folks, through the military. Other folks are natives. One of the reasons I'm running for mayor of Mount Pleasant is because I believe strongly we need a mayor for all of Mount Pleasant, which includes people who came here as natives, who were born here, as well as those who moved here in the last few years. So that's an important part of why I want to serve. But I give you my background because we also, one of the things I've seen over the years is my many, many years of experience, both as a businesswoman who started my business while my husband was out to sea for 15 of the first 24 months of our marriage, was to build a business in one of the most difficult industries for women at that time, only about 5% women, which is the investment industry. And what I was able to do was to show that through very hard work, perseverance, and learning how to get out and speak with people and meet people where they were. Many of my earliest clients, I was a whopping 22-year-old. So the nerve of me to try to tell people how to invest their money. But what I learned was that it was important to meet people where they were, whether it was Whitesides Elementary or Berkeley Elementary teachers or enlisted Navy. Today, after 4 years on council, I have loved what I'm doing, but I believe strongly that we need a much more proactive, positive direction. And I will be drawing from my experience, both as a business person, a mom raising my children here, and also with the 4 years I've served on council on 8 different committees. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Lee's going to start our questions off.
Thanks, Kelly. So I will start with question number 1. Do you support the current part-time mayor and strong council form of our municipal government, or would you vote to increase the power of our mayor? Do you support at-large town council seats or single-member district seats?
Is this for me or for Ms. Landing going first?
I think, Will, you're going to go first.
Oh, well, obviously I support it because I ran for it. We have the council form of government where the mayor does not run the town on a day-to-day basis, and there's not an employee who answers directly to the mayor. The mayor does not submit the budget for passing and do all of those things that happen under the mayor-council form of government. I obviously support it because I ran for it and got elected to it, served under it, and I'm asking for another term. And as far as I can see, it's probably going to stay that way. What I think, though, is that the people of the town ought to have the right to vote, and anyone who is a council member should let the people of the town vote on that, because I have learned in my 4 years of speaking to every civic club of every type you can imagine around the town, especially people that have moved here recently from other places. They are basically shocked to find out that the mayor can't call the public services department and direct someone to go empty their trash can if it got missed, or tell staff to go clean off a storm drain or something. I call the town administrator, and the town administrator decides who on the staff ought to do that. So I would support having a referendum for that. And after looking at things closely and seeing a failed attempt on council to have 8 districts, which I think would be a nightmare for Mount Pleasant, I think we need 4 districts in Mount Pleasant and 4 at large. And that way in every election, you have 2 people from districts and 2 people at large, so that the voters have a constant vote townwide on who represents them. And I do want to clarify one thing. Under the mayor-council form, the mayor has no more power. Council, and this comes from the Municipal Association, the mayor has more duties, but the mayor has no more power than the mayor does under the council form, and the Municipal Association will back that up. Council sets all the rules, still votes on all the budgets, still decides on the comp plan, still decides on zoning. So the term strong mayor is a misnomer.
Well, in my opinion on this subject is that well, first of all, we have a program through the Municipal Association of South Carolina called the Municipal Elected Officials Institute. They offer a training program with 7 or 8 courses, which I took and completed and graduated from. And in fact, I'm going to be taking their advanced course in October on public safety. And I'm very excited about taking that. And in that, there's a whole section on governance. And why I point this out is because it is very clear on the difference between the council form of government and the mayor form of government, strong mayor. I believe strongly that if you have 9 people giving input from the approximately 95,000 folks we have in Mount Pleasant, that there's a lot more collaboration, a lot more ability to bring different ideas to the table, share those ideas, and really find great solutions. When you have a strong mayor, the mayor is responsible both, as our current mayor has said, for the submitting of the budget, which, by the way, takes a tremendous amount of background. I have years and years of experience in budgeting and working on budgets both for corporations and individuals. However, I think that that time commitment takes away from the duty of really serving the people. The other job is that you are responsible for staff, for hiring and firing, which means you have to spend a tremendous amount of time in town hall knowing what's going on with the staff. I think having a town administrator, as we do with over 20 years experience in our case with Eric DeMora, who also has a master's degree in public administration, is a great way to go, because our council is able to focus on things like I did in the last last 2 weeks, meeting with folks in the old village about the Spites Field problem and using that for our drainage, and we were able to get that moved. On the issue of hybrid or other type of districts, I was the one who brought the idea up 4 years ago when this was a big contention, and I think my time's up. But just real quickly, I brought the idea up because I do want everybody to vote in every election, but I do think 4 districts, just like the mayor said, would be a great way to go, and then 4 at large. Thank you.
Thank you both. So for the next question, do you support beach access and parking for all residents of Mount Pleasant on our barrier islands? How would you propose we preserve that access? So this one goes to Kathy Landing first.
Okay, well, first of all, we did have this come up, as I think most people are well aware, and it became a fairly contentious issue, sadly, during our COVID and the lockdowns and the distancing and other things that we were trying to do. And in some ways, it almost felt like it got distorted during that time. And what we as a council did, and I still agree that this was the right thing to do, and I believe the mayor and I are very close on this subject because we voted the same way, was a resolution to the state working with our representatives, such as Representative Mark Smith and also with Senator Larry Grooms, on the issue that the state, in fact, I'm going to get a quote for you here. According to our South Carolina Attorney General, when this was originally set up, under the public trust doctrine, the state of South Carolina owns the beaches below the high water mark for the benefit of the public. So I think certainly the beaches should remain open for everyone's use. And similarly, the road out there on Isle of Palms especially is a state road. So we believe strongly that these should be available to people. Just like we actually do as a town of Mount Pleasant own Waterfront Park and Shem Creek docks and so forth, but part of the Shem Creek docks, but we would not want to close these or town center to our neighbors in Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island. So I think there was a lot of panic and a lot of things that probably should not have happened, but my position on that stays the same. We should leave the beaches and parking available. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Will.
Thank you very much. I think my role in this is made clear and demonstrated very well by the fact that I have the endorsement and support of Myra Jones, who started the Charleston Beach Access Group, who is also running for town council. She has endorsed me and is a contributor to my campaign. And when the group had the celebration out at the Windjammer, they published a thing of their beach access heroes, and I was listed on there among others like Senator Grooms. And I was privileged to be in the room with Senator Grooms in Town Hall in our committee meeting room when we had the discussion about the best way to go about this was through the state, because that is state property, that is state access, and those are state roads. And he said he was going to introduce a bill, and Senator Grooms kept his word, introduced that bill. As Ms. Landing said, we did pass a resolution urging the legislature to pass it, and it passed overwhelmingly. But I'm also proud of the fact that by invitation, I also serve on the CARTA board for our public transportation. And I champion the cause of beach access, not just for those who are fortunate enough to own a vehicle, but those who rely on public transportation. I'm a big advocate of it. We started the Beach Reach shuttle. Hundreds of people used it. The town of Mount Pleasant put up half of the funding, and we challenged the Isle of Palms to put up the other half, and that worked very well. So when we talk about beach access, we're not just talking about those who drive their own car. We're talking about those who have every right to it as much as people who own a car and rely on public transit to get there. So I'm proud of my record on this all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, are you there? Okay. So
I'm here.
awesome.
To my question. Just give me 1 sec. All right. So next question. It's a 2-part question. Just 1 sec while I get through this section. All right. Due to current spike in COVID-19 cases and the 29464 zip code consistently ranking higher in our county for cases, would you support a mask mandate to slow the spread of the virus? Next part of that question, Charleston County and the cities of Charleston and North Charleston are requiring COVID vaccinations for government employees. Do you support the requirement for vaccination or weekly testing of all town and Mount Pleasant employees?
Who goes first here? Are we rotating? Am I first?
Yes, sir. You're first.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I have championed mask mandates all along. Everyone knows that it was a very contentious issue on our council. And when we first had a vote on mask requirements as an emergency ordinance, an emergency ordinance requires a 2/3 majority and it failed. When we brought it back as a regular ordinance that requires 2 readings and time in between, it passed by a 5-4 majority. So I have known from the start of COVID that I had 4 council members who would vote for masks, and there were 4 who consistently voted against those, including my opponent tonight. So when this spike came up this time, I spoke to one of the 4 who is a swing voter, and the support for a mask mandate right now as a majority is not there. So we could not get that to pass through. And this, as we say in COVID, in a pandemic, we have to make relevant decisions. What's relevant today may not have been relevant several weeks ago. And so I know that the support of our council for one right now is not there. Our vaccination rate in Mount Pleasant is over 70% of those eligible to get the vaccine age 12 and up. Very proud of that. I took leadership in that and brought national publicity on every major news network and other places for our vaccination effort in the town of Mount Pleasant. So I do think that municipal employees should be vaccinated for the same reason the military is. They have a life-saving mission, and we have to have force readiness for that. So I think that we should have a vaccination mandate. And I think if I had the support of council to do a mask mandate right now, we would have one of some sort. I don't know exactly what it would be because, again, you have to go with what you can get the support of council to do.
So from the very beginning, let me just say I didn't talk about my background, but I do have a pre-med Bachelor of Science in Biology from Duke University. So I spent 4 years studying extensively science classes and worked at Duke Hospital for a year and worked in genetic research, something very, very similar to the monoclonal antibody work that we've heard so much about. That was actually going on in the early 80s. And I chose not to go to med school. I didn't even apply. I decided instead to work on a master's degree in hospital administration at MUSC. And I bring that up because my first 2 classes were economics and management. But going back to COVID for a second here, once I took those classes, I pivoted to finance. Now, having said all that, that doesn't mean I haven't had an interest the entire time in medicine. As a matter of fact, I've been a 24-year member of the Operation Smile Board. I've been very, very geared towards science and medicine. I've been on medical missions to foreign countries. I believe strongly in the importance of data when you're making decisions, because emotion has run very, very high during all this. And early on in the pandemic, which I was following very closely, besides the fact that I was a town council member, being someone in the investment industry and watching the impact on the economy, I have done my very, very best to make sure that I had the most current information available. And I have it actually right on my phone all the way back to March 4th of last year, and literally every day for a while and then weekly, including recently, where I was able to spot that over the last several weeks, we were trending down. From late August, we've been trending down now for at least 3 weeks, 10% a week, many of these weeks, in the numbers in Mount Pleasant. looking specifically at our purview. The reason I believe that's important, we are already at the turning point, and the head of MUSC just came out the other day and actually said it looks like we've already peaked and we're well on our way down. Mount Pleasant has done an amazing job with vaccinations. We are actually at this point closer to 80% of our eligibles. By the way, we were 70% all the way back in April. Again, I watch the numbers all the time. I believe data-driven decisions are the best decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Charleston City Council and Charleston County Council have both passed climate action plans. What do you propose Mount Pleasant do to address action on climate, such as solar panels on government buildings, electric cars for town-owned vehicle fleets, more trees, and cleaning up public works equipment and maintenance practices? Kathy Landing.
So I'm very happy to get to answer this one first, because the mayor and I both know I have been talking about trees since the day I was elected, pretty much. I am someone who has spent years and years, my husband and I are studying things related to the environment. My husband and I are major donors for the Nicholas School of the Environment, one of the top in the world. And in 2019, Orrin Pilkey, who was a professor at Duke when I studied at the Duke Marine Lab, wrote a book called Sea Level Rise. And in it, he mentioned a couple of things, including the fact that out of the top, say, 30 or 25 cities in America that were at risk for sea level rise, Charleston ranks number 11. And so it is extremely important that we do things that will mitigate this impact. The sea level is rising. No argument about why. There's no point in even wasting time on that. What we need to do is make sure we do something about it. So we as a council have done things like we fixed the drainage in Snee Farm, which was desperately needed. This was something all of council voted on. We made sure it was funded, and it proceeded, and it's done. We are now proceeding, in fact, we're doing a groundbreaking on Friday for the Royal Basin drainage. And then we'll be moving on to Edwards Basin and really taking care of the old village, which is well overdue. But we need to do a lot more. I introduced on Earth Day this year a plan that I had actually proposed 3 years ago in my very first year on council at that time. And that was to plant a lot more trees. So I called it 95,000 trees for Mount Pleasant, because we have approximately 95,000 residents. And actually our staff got excited and took this to heart, and they called it Take Root Mount Pleasant. So if you'll go to our website, tompsc.com, you will see Take Root Mount Pleasant. And this is an effort to have us share pictures and stories about planting trees all throughout this community. This also means we don't want to be taking down as many trees. We put in a tree buffer that was much more extensive once we were all voted into council. So I believe strongly in that. I also believe strongly we need to have more use of reusable bags. When we did the plastics ordinance, we actually ended up causing a lot more use of paper bags at stores, which upsets me. I've been using reusable bags for years. So I have a whole process around that, and I run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a man in South Carolina named Tom Mulliken, and he is the appointed head of the State Floodwaters Task Force. And they just did a hike called the South Carolina 7, where they hiked the 7 natural wonders of South Carolina, starting in the mountains and ending on the coast. And part of the video, which is called Higher Ground, has to do with the effects of sea level rise. I'm proud to have Tom Mulliken have endorsed me and has contributed to my campaign because of my work on coastal flooding, my background in conservation. I'm the only candidate for mayor who spent a decade heading a conservation organization that saved 40,000 acres from development. Why is that important? Because the less land that is developed, the better we're able to deal with climate change. There was a national convention in Portland, Oregon. They had juried presentations. You had to audition for it. And I was pleased to give a national presentation about carbon sequestration on conserved properties on the coast of South Carolina. So I have a conservation background. I have made it happen. I don't just suggest it, I make it happen. Boone Hall is an example of that. The organization that I led got the conservation easement on that, so Boone Hall will never be developed. I also proposed and council supported with Ms. Landing's support, and she is on the committee and has served very well, a flood resilience committee to help us deal with the effects of tidal flooding from sea level rise and stormwater flooding. So I'm very proud of my conservation record. We're going to look forward, and yes, I'm all for green energy, for solar panels on government buildings. And we had an infrastructure meeting yesterday region-wide, and they talked about the effect that all of the battery operated electric vehicles are going to have. And I think it would be great for the town to take the leadership in that.
All right, next question. Would you support the ban of openly carried firearms during special events like parades and festivals, as well as in all town-owned buildings and parks?
Am I first?
I think so this time.
I think it's my turn. Yes, I chair the Police Judicial and Legal Committee, and we are in several drafts of how to do that because the state open carry law that was just passed leaves it open for municipalities within state law to limit open carry at permitted town events. And I know this starts getting wonky and people's eyes start rolling when you start talking about the difference between permitted events and other type events, but state law does allow us to do that. That being said, when we took the oath of office for municipal office, we swore to uphold the law and uphold the state constitution. So open carry is the law of the state. The job for us, and what you need to know about us as you consider who to vote for mayor, is where we stand on what those limits would be. We should not have open carry at demonstrations larger than 50 people, or maybe even smaller than that. We should not have open carry at parades, at the Children's Festival, at Park West, and we don't allow concealed carry in town buildings now. We're not going to allow, I don't see us allowing open carry in town buildings either. Those things are also allowed under state law. So you still have to have a concealed weapons permit to open carry, but I don't think having our police officers managing a protest, and remember, they are there to protect the protesters as much as they are to protect anyone else from protesters. They're protecting everybody's rights and everybody's property. And most of law enforcement is in agreement with that, that we don't want large protests with police in the middle and people angry with each other open carrying.
So South Carolina was actually the 46th state to enact the open carry with training law. And as we all know, it requires you to have a CWP. And so and this is for people who are age 21 and over. So by definition of CWP, concealed weapons permit, most people that have gone to the trouble of getting that training are concealing it. If they're carrying, they're doing it because they don't want to be carrying openly. Some people would say they become a target much quicker. So first of all, my own personal view on this is that I have not seen, since this became enacted several weeks back, I have not seen anybody open carrying, certainly not in Mount Pleasant. And in fact, the only person I've seen open carrying is our Congresswoman, Nancy Mace, who brought it to a Berkeley County Faith, Family, and Freedom. Interestingly enough, we've had our mayor talk an awful lot about the endorsements he's getting, and he strongly endorsed Nancy Mace for Congress. So I believe strongly, as a nonpartisan position, we should not be endorsing partisan positions. And that is one of the reasons why I strongly want you to know I will not be endorsing candidates when I'm serving as mayor. But going back to the issue of town buildings at this time, you cannot carry a concealed weapon, and I'm certain we would not allow open carry. And you asked the question about parades, things of that nature. This is a situation where it will be very hard to police, but obviously if someone's open carrying, you could see it. So I believe it makes perfect sense for us to say that at a parade or child's event or anything like that. Also, please remember, Any business that wants to prevent open or concealed weapon carry can order the sign, the official sign from SLED, and put it up on their door, and that has to be enforced. So people can choose for their own business, and certainly the town can choose for events where it's most appropriate to make sure we don't have open carry at those events. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So for our next question, Charleston County Council has recently proposed a revised, compromised Highway 41 expansion plan. Do you support the compromised plan as it stands now? And this one goes to Kathy Planning first.
Thank you. No one has worked harder on this subject than I have, and I can definitely say that declaratively. I drive 41 several times a day, and I'm the only council member that lives in the 41 corridor area. And I go a lot further than just driving it. I have met with people from all the different areas surrounding here, but most especially the Phillips community and the Dunes West and Park West POA presidents and individual residents. And from the very beginning, from the day I was elected, this was an issue I focused on. We as council early on had sent a resolution to the county, even though we don't have purview or jurisdiction over this decision, about staying straight down the road. The problem was that became this issue, even though that was originally what was chosen, it became this issue of, are we going to be taking their land, the folks that live along 41's land? Are we going to be getting homes that are so close to the highway? So I came up with a plan, an alternative plan. Serving on the Transportation Committee, I asked a lot of questions and brought up an alternative that was about 4 narrow lanes with a planted median, to call it Phillips Boulevard, through that approximately 1 mile stretch. They weren't comfortable with that, the folks at Phillips, and I know them well now, because they couldn't turn left out of their driveway. So we tried to come up with various things. What we do not need is a highway that bypasses not so much 41, but Bessemer Road, going through our beautiful Laurel Hill Park. The mayor's backers enthusiastically support this idea, and I believe strongly that when you take 22 acres of trees, which is what would be impacted by this, and you clear cut them and put in impervious pavement, we will be creating a tremendous additional flooding problem. And anyone who lives along the 41 corridor knows we already have a lot. Trees, in this case, potentially are drinking up as much as 10 million gallons of water a year. Where is all that going to go? So I believe strongly what we need to do instead is work proactively, as the current mayor would, or if I would already have started working with the Berkeley County folks in order to make sure that Cainhoy does not get developed so that all those cars come over into Mount Pleasant every single day. Thank you. Does not get developed without all the services that they need. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you very much. When council was elected, and one of the things that we do have under our form of government is that the mayor appoints the committees. And I put Mrs. Landing on the Transportation Committee for this very reason. And I'm glad to hear her mention the service she has done on Highway 41. And that's exactly why I asked her to serve on that committee. I started working on Highway 41 in 2016 before I was mayor, when I served on town council. And at that time, Representative Bustos and I made a proposal that the county turn Highway 41 over to the town so that we could be masters of our own fate on this, and we could do right by the citizens of Mount Pleasant, since many thousands more of our residents are affected by it than are the county residents. The county chose not to do that. And I also agree with the statement, this is a county project that they have authority over. We do not make designs and submit designs to them. And since this has started, and since 2017, so since I was elected mayor in November 17, so as a councilman and then as mayor, they have received 6,500 comments. They have held 158 meetings. They have proposed 20 alternatives to be evaluated, and there were 130 stakeholders involved. And I sat in those stakeholder meetings. Many of them were at Mount Pleasant Waterworks. So we have been through these. And when Alternative 7 or 7A came out, and it was just egregious about Joe Rouse Road and what was going to happen to the Covington section of Park West, we voted that off. We do have the thing where we can vote under the law to not allow it to affect our infrastructure. So a 4-3-4 plan will work. You hear that a lot. I too have met with Dunes West, Park West representatives, their official representatives, and I've worked with the county. One thing we must do is bring this back out into the open. No side deals on this. Do it in the open. Go back to those 158 meetings. Let the public have input so that plans don't come out of a back room and no one knows who is involved with them. So bring it out to the light. And I invited County Council to convene in our council chambers and hold their meeting in Mount Pleasant to hear from Mount Pleasant residents on this.
Great. So next question. How do you recommend the town create a sustainable revenue beyond the next 5 years to pay for improvement projects like parks, recreation facilities, and public use spaces on top of needs like roads and stormwater improvements? Many residents' HOA fees are much more than their municipal taxes. Are our municipal taxes too high, too low, or enough to sustain our town's way of living looking ahead?
Am I first this time?
Yep.
I think so. Okay, thank you very much. Well, one of the best things we did, and when I came on council in 2015, remember we unseated 3 incumbents, and we were part of the Save Shem Creek movement that wanted to rein in growth for our town and do things like fix drainage and save green space and do all of those things. And it was a struggle. It was an absolute struggle when we got on because we had runaway development. Part of what we did with that was we fought to have impact fees raised to 100% of what the cost is that is shown in a study that the developments cause when they put strain on our infrastructure, be it roads, recreation, police, fire, all of those. And so since I've been on council, I have voted to increase those fees. When they were first passed, they weren't high enough. I didn't support the original bill because we left taxpayers subsidizing development, and our taxpayers do not want to subsidize the impact of development. So impact fees are one of the things. I have never tried to lower them. I want the developers to pay their fair share on when they put a strain on your infrastructure. So we've got to protect those impact fees. Impact fees, we were told, were going to be a disaster for development in Mount Pleasant. Nobody was going to develop in Mount Pleasant. We're still fighting to keep development reined in. It has not driven anybody away, and it's taken the burdens off the back of our taxpayers. Then, when we had to readdress our tax millage rate for the town, we were at 41 mills. We're now at 39 mills. We rolled it back 2, and we put 2 of those mills into, call it a lockbox, to service debt, so that when we fix drainage or we build new roads, and we're getting ready to start on $40 million worth of new roads for the town, that those 2 mills, which are less than like $40 a house if you're the average house in Mount Pleasant, will fix and pay for drainage and infrastructure in the future. And I'm proud to have been part of that compromise and that forward-looking deal. If there is another municipality doing that, I haven't seen it. I hope they are, but it's an idea we thought whose time had come for the town of Mount Pleasant.
So one of the main reasons I ran for council was observing in my own area, Bessemer Road as an example, and Cambridge Square in Park West, areas that had been zoned for commercial and or light industrial and ended up being converted over to residential. And it made absolutely no sense to me to add that many more cars in places where we didn't have businesses and services. So one of the things also that happened is in 2008, as we well know, we had a terrible recession, tremendous debt burden on the country and everything else that happened. And in 2009 is when a lot of this conversion happened, and the subsequent years that the mayor is referring to. So my thought was we need more businesses and services. And this is especially true in the north end of town. We're all one Mount Pleasant, but there is an area that's further to the north that is much later in the development process. And unfortunately, a lot of this is where that conversion of property happened, so that we end up with a whole lot of, like Suburban Nation, a book I read when I was getting ready to run for council, where you have suburban sprawl and you don't have enough services, jobs, and things that people can do without getting in a car and driving a long distance. So I've been working very hard as economic development chair this whole time to try to bring services and jobs, high paying jobs, to our side of the bridge. We desperately needed to diversify our economy. And we have hospitality and healthcare, we know that, but hospitality is subject even during COVID and certainly during 2008 to a recession more than a lot of others. So we have brought a lot of other types of businesses. Some of those businesses can take over existing land. I helped, existing properties, and then they don't have to pay impact fees. But when they have to pay impact fees, the numbers are so high now that it is a detriment. It is a deterrent. We are having a hard time with this. And the only one that can afford the fees, even now in many cases that I have checked with, are the big boxes, which is not what the residents of Mount Pleasant want. They want the mom and pop, they want the smaller shops. Most of the ones that have opened, and I've been to every single ribbon cutting, which is a ton of them, but they've mostly been where they took over existing space. So my time is out, but I strongly urge that we keep impact fees lower and that we pay for things by going forward with with getting more businesses here.
Thank you. For our next question, do you feel that attainable workforce housing should be a priority for the town? And if so, what suggestions do you have to make it a reality? And we start with you, Kathy Landing.
So this is another area that I have championed from the beginning. The reason I feel so strongly is when you talk to business owners, especially trying to recruit new businesses here, what you find is one of the biggest problems in Mount Pleasant before COVID and now since is hiring enough people. And so we have about 32,000 cars coming over the bridge every day for people coming here to work or go to school, go to the hospitals, but mostly going to work because they can't afford to live in Mount Pleasant. We need people like our firefighters, our police, our nurses, our scrub nurses, our med techs, hospitality workers. These folks don't necessarily make the incomes that it takes to live in the average housing costs, both rental and purchasing homes. So Mount Pleasant Housing for All is an organization that we all supported on council, or at least I'm not sure of the mayor's voting record. I know I did from the beginning. I've visited places that are also very high end and very expensive. You have to do something a little outside the box when you have that situation. So we love how popular Mount Pleasant is. And for those of us who have the luxury of having a home, we're happy that values have gone up, but it's very hard for other people. So I was one of the first ones that said, we don't want to do this by simply raising taxes, floating a bond. That idea came up, and then buying land and then selling it at a discount to developers. I said, no, let's work with developers to encourage them to build workforce housing. And it was exempted in our first moratorium several years ago, but it was also exempted in our most recent one, which I did vote for. And the purpose was to say, hey, use the state tax credits and we'll help do if you need things done. But the most important key is it needs to be near major infrastructure. It doesn't need to be in the heart of an existing neighborhood. It needs to be close to where the jobs are needed, such as the hospitals or such as the fire stations or town hall. And then on top of that, it needs to be next to highways and major roads so that it's easy to get back and forth. So those are some of the priorities that I plan to continue to work hard on. Thank you.
Thank you. So next question is really in the same vein. Do
we've
you
got-
support?
I didn't answer.
Oh, sorry about that.
I didn't answer. Thank you. Yes, and to clarify, Housing for All Mount Pleasant started as our affordable housing task force, and I voted as a council member, again, before I was mayor and before Ms. Landing was on town council. I voted for that. I'm not a new convert to this, and I'm not a new convert to the one thing that has saved attainable housing property from development, and that is our apartment and multifamily moratorium. I have voted to uphold the moratorium every time since it first came up when I was a council member. I'm not a new convert to this. What that has done is kept all of our multifamily zone land from being gobbled up for yet more typical development, to the highest bidder. And the moratorium has exempted attainable housing from impact fees. And lo and behold, we just broke ground a few months ago on Gregory Ferry, the first attainable affordable housing project in Mount Pleasant in years. And one of the people I spoke to at that event is a school teacher, a single mom, and a school teacher and a colleague of my wife's. The other thing I'm doing is I'm serving on the One Region Roadmap Committee, and we have spent hours looking at attainable housing, affordable housing, workforce housing. And we were looking at the data, and we're coming up with a regional strategy to do that. And it's my privilege to serve on that as the only elected official who's in every one of those meetings. And the other thing is that you just have to make it work. I put Tony Berry in touch with Roper Hospital because Roper in the north end of Mount Pleasant needs more workers. They need attainable housing. They got together and talked about a way that they could promote attainable housing because we need it near our large employment centers. So I have a long record of supporting attainable housing, and I look forward to continuing working on that.
Thank you both. And thank you for your patience as I was trying to skip ahead.
Okay.
All right. Next question. Do you support a wage increase for our town police officers and firefighters? And you'll start.
Sure, absolutely. You know, I think part of this is a big understanding too, because as we mentioned, the mayor under our form of government does not propose a budget. Our budgets come from department heads through the town administrator, and it goes through committees. So ours came through the Police, Judicial, and Legal Committee, and ours came through the Fire Committee, which Ms. Landing serves on. One question I always ask as the chair, and I've chaired it for 4 years now for the police, is this question, and I learned it from my leadership mentor at the Citadel. Does this budget give you the manpower, the funding, and the training that you need to carry out your mission? If that answer has ever been no, and it never has been no, I would not vote for that in committee to recommend it to the full council. I don't know if that question was asked at the Fire Committee or not. Ms. Landing serves on it. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer that question. So what we did was we funded the study to carry forward the wages from 2019 from a wage study that was done. And I support implementing the findings of that study, adjusted for things like benefits and things that actually cost the town money, but to pay our first responders the maximum appropriate amount of money that this study shows. And I don't even know where that will come in. I haven't seen the numbers yet. And I also support, and I told our lawyer the other day, let's make that report public. Don't make people have to ask for it through the Freedom of Information Act. Make that report public. And I'm committed to do that. And I also think we should do that before we spend $6.5 million on a speculative land deal that has not been recommended through any economic development strategic plan that I'm aware of. And I'm aware with all of them. So I think we take care of our people before we go out and buy land.
So let me start by saying that one of the things that happened with it coming public about Mount Pleasant's wages, especially for our first responders, is that we had a 2016 to 2020 4-year rotation. This would have been our normal cycle every 4 years. And then in between we do CPI, although actually we went ahead of inflation rates, 4% increases each year. The intention was last February, we were about to see that wage and compensation study, and then COVID hit. And because of COVID hitting, that had to be put on the sidelines because we were very committed as council not to furlough anybody and not to lay anyone off. And so we did. We kept everybody on the payroll the whole time. But then when the time came after we got through that, and we're still dealing with the pandemic, but we are in a much better shape in terms of knowing where our business revenue figures are and ATAC figures, accommodations tax figures, we were able to see that we could move forward with raises. And this would be for all of our staff, not just for our first responders, but definitely would compensate those folks. So that is about to come. I've asked repeatedly for this to be brought as quickly as possible. As it turns out, it's just being finalized now, and we will see it in the HR committee, which I sit on in next week. And then we will bring it to council and we'll be voting on that at council. I do want to clarify one or two things. There keep being little barbs and hints of things that I might or might not have said from our current mayor. And in fact, a good example is the one about like being a recent convert. I am not a recent convert about the importance of workforce housing. When we had our first vote to do a permit allocation, one of the things in that, which I voted for right away, to slow down our residential housing growth. One of the things in that was that it was a very limited number for multifamily. And we were told by staff that that number back in 2018 was already spoken for by the multifamily that was already allowed. So therefore it was already used up. And I said, well, we don't need a belt and suspenders solution. We've got the permit allocation. We're good to go for a while. So I did not vote for the moratorium then, only because it was not needed. I did vote for it this last time. I wanted us to have the data first. We didn't have the data for the first reading, so I had to go out and get it myself. And when I saw where we were on our multifamily versus single family and where we were on our needs for workforce housing, I said, no, we need to preserve our land for workforce housing. So we need to stop this constant barbing and pulling things out of context, because it only proves my point that we have a lot of toxicity on our council right now, which is a shame.
Thank you all. So we are down to our closing statements, and we have just a touch more time. So instead of 2 minutes, 3 minutes for each of you for your closing statements. So we'll start first with Kathy Landing, and then we'll finish with Will Haynie. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again for this opportunity. This has been a great discussion. And let me just say again, the main reasons I'm running, back in January of this year, Mayor Pro Tem Tom O'Rourke called me and said, Kathy, you need to run for mayor. And I said, Tom, why me? I thought you might run for mayor. You're the Mayor Pro Tem and you have years of experience and a lot of folks that know you. And he said, no, it has to be you. And I said, why, Tom? He said, because you're the one that is so passionate about serving the people of Mount Pleasant that you let all the negativity roll off your back. I said something earlier about the fact that one of my primary reasons for running for mayor is because I believe we need a proactive, positive mayor who knows how to collaborate to get things done. And another important thing is we need a mayor for all of Mount Pleasant, not just a special interest group, not just a certain part of town, but the entire community, including people who have just moved here. This is their hometown too, and they want to feel welcome. And how do you do that? You have to do that deliberately. You have to sponsor things that help bring out everyone. We do have a lot of town events that are wonderful. We have terrific things like the Blessing of the Fleet and the Christmas Parade and many others. But it's important that we also have a lot of community building. Every time that I have differed on a vote related to council, I have given an explanation before I cast that vote, especially when I was one of the only ones on the other side of it. And in it, I explained, I believe this particular vote will divide the town. Here's why I propose a different way. And a good example is Mount Pleasant Eco-Friendly Partners, when I came out with my idea in 2018, and how we could really work together as a town to incentivize becoming much more environmentally conscious, dealing with litter, dealing with marsh sweeps, and adopting a highway, and many other things. So these are just some of the ideas I have. When I talk about positive, I've served with 11 other council members, not including our current mayor. Of the 12 of us, 9 of us have been smeared regularly on social media or in the news by the mayor or his backers on a fairly regular basis. And when you look at why that's happened, it's usually happened because we didn't agree on votes. When we have a vote, when I'm serving as mayor, I expect we'll have a lot of debate. It'll be lively discussion. We're representing a lot of people, but you know what? When the vote is over, I will go home and I will not be posting things out on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else, or calling names or comparing people to some sort of crazy concept like conspiracy theorists. This is disrespectful. We need our council to work together and collaborate, and that's how you solve problems. That is the kind of positive, proactive mayor that I will be, and I look forward to being able to serve the people of Mount Pleasant for 4 more years as your mayor. On November 2nd, please vote Kathy Landing for Mayor of Mount Pleasant, and go to kathylanding.com for much more information about my background and credentials. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Have a good evening.
Timer, you getting ready? Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Mayor Will Haynie. It has been my privilege to serve as your mayor for the last 4 years, and I served as a member of town council for 2 years before that. And you may remember that at that time we had runaway growth in the town of Mount Pleasant, and it was an uphill struggle to bring to the town of Mount Pleasant the kind of leadership that said we will not adopt the ideology of the cancer cell, which is growth for growth's sake. We will grow on purpose. We will define the type of town that we are going to be. One of the things I'm proudest of, that as mayor, by I think putting the right people on the right committees, and we provided the right leadership and we worked together, we just passed a new 10-year comprehensive plan that sets the vision for Mount Pleasant and the way our town will look and feel for the next 10 years as required by law. We passed it unanimously. There was no division among council. There was no rancor from the people of the town. And when I first got on council, believe me, council chambers were full of people. They were mad. They weren't being heard. They felt like they were losing the Mount Pleasant that they love and the reason that they moved here. I moved here 10 years ago for the third time in my life. So I'm not that much of a lifelong resident of the town of Mount Pleasant. And when I ran for mayor, I put my plan out there and I won 37 of 39 precincts in this town. And the two that I lost by about 58 votes. I think the town of Mount Pleasant adopts my vision because my vision is their vision. I did not force a vision on the people of Mount Pleasant. I think that I took that vision and took it into the public realm. When I gave a State of the Town address in January of 2018, after having been elected in November, I laid out what I was going to do to protect our people, our economy, and our environment, to protect our quality of life, to protect our neighborhoods. And you can check off every one of those boxes. With the support of our council, all of those have passed. They include the comprehensive plan. They include purchasing the Wando dock to save the shrimping fleet that we have in Mount Pleasant and Shem Creek, which is the heartbeat of our town right there. They include reasonable guidelines and restrictions on short-term rentals that don't gobble up our affordable housing. But talk about bringing the town together. I think things that you need to do is go to things like the Martin Luther King East Cooper Collaborative Ceremony. When I started going, they made a big deal out of it because no mayor and other council members had not been doing that. I've been endorsed by Cheryl German and John Wright because we work together proactively in this pandemic to do outreach for our vaccinations in the town of Mount Pleasant. So there's one candidate that has brought our town together. There's one candidate that has worked on the things that aren't just about growth and development, but the things that hurt our hearts, like opioid abuse, like the COVID crisis and the people who were paying the price of that, our healthcare workers who I have respected and backed every time they have come to the town and given us advice on something we needed to do. So Suzette and I ask for the privilege of serving you for 4 more years to keep doing all these type things that I know and you know are good for our town. Thank you.
Thank you both. We so appreciate your time, Will Haynie and Kathy Landing. We know you're very busy, so thank you so much for joining us this evening. I want to thank all the members for submitting questions. Thank you to Lee Rowland, Donna Brown-Newton, and Ryan Wright for their help this evening. As a reminder, the Mount Pleasant Municipal election for mayor, town council, and waterworks commissioner is November 2nd. The last day to register to vote is October 3rd. The last day to request your absentee ballot is October 9th. Our next meeting is October the 26th. We'll host another forum for Mount Pleasant Town Council. Please email any questions you have by the 12th to eastcooper@charlestondemocrats.com. And we will be posting this video and we will give you all some details as we get that done. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate y'all being here with us tonight.